What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video where I am just a guy on the internet talking about basketball. If you do enjoy these videos, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Helps me out so much. Also, make sure to turn post notifications on so you never miss a video. And I try to get videos out every day. Sometimes I'm not able to, depending on if I'm in school or not, with however much work I'm doing. It really just depends, but at the end of the day, I try to get as much videos out as possible in order for you guys to be able to enjoy them and to keep up to date and see how you guys are feeling about NBA news. And today, we're going to be looking at this article from a website, Franchise Sports. It's not the biggest one, but I wanted something to look at least in the background of talking. And I know the offseason's not technically over just yet, but a lot of the bigger names are off the market. So we have, other than maybe Kevin Durant or DeAndre Ayton, we have guys, or we have a general idea of what the offseason for each team is going to be, considering today all the signings were made official. So it looks like most teams are going to be what they look like now, despite or without any other trades going on behind the scenes. So that's something we can't really count for, but at the end of the day, it's probably going to be one or two teams that change up, mostly just considering whoever gets Kevin Durant. So let's go ahead and hop right into this. They start out with the Celtics in an A grade. I agree with this completely. The Celtics made a finals run that nobody saw coming last year, and they were in it for a little bit there. Jason Tatum really needed to show up in order for them to get something done, and there have been talks of them trading for Donovan Mitchell, but at the end of the day, Danilo Gallinari is another good shooter off the bench, and Malcolm Brogdon, that trade was amazing for Boston. They get him without giving up any key players, and a guy that brings you some more defense and some more shooting, whether he's healthy the entire season or not. Just a great trade for them. Next up, we've got the Nets with that F, and yeah, I agree. This honestly could be up there, a B or a C, depending on what they trade for Kevin Durant. They do bring in Royce O'Neal. So it looked like they were trying to get their team back to contending. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving want to be out of Brooklyn, apparently. So that's the big reason that they're getting the F grade. But at the end of the day, if they're able to get a good young piece, some picks, all of that in return, maybe it's not that bad of an offseason for them. I'd say maybe a C for the Nets, depending on what they get in return. The Knicks obviously moved away from Nerlens Noel, Kemba Walker, and Alec Burks. Bring in Jalen Brunson on a okay deal, not a good deal at all for a guy like him, but an okay deal. Isaiah Hartenstein comes in to back up Mitchell Robinson. Robinson's contract was fairly large, and the C minus. Sure, I mean, it wasn't as exciting or good offseason for the Nets or Knicks. It was just kind of an okay one. I mean, then the trades on draft day were terrible. The Jalen Brunson trade was the Jalen Brunson contract, if I could speak, was very questionable. But at the end of the day, they still have RJ Barrett. They still have Mitchell Robinson. Isaiah Hartenstein was a great center for the Clippers last year. So I would think C minus is a good spot to put them at. The Sixers, A minus for bringing back James Harden, bringing in PJ Tucker and Daniel House. So that's an interesting acquisition there. D'Anthony Melton, I really like that trade for the 76ers. A minus for them is, despite not having a very eventful offseason, I think an A minus is very fair for them to put, or for their offseason they've had. The Raptors, they re-upped Chris Boucher, brought in Thaddeus Young. They're in trade talks in order to get Kevin Durant. It looks like they're probably going to fall out of the trade talks because they don't want to give up Scotty Barnes, which is completely reasonable. But at the end of the day, C plus, just because they didn't do a lot to get better, and they're still a young team, so they do have a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to get better as a team already. So maybe they didn't have to do too much other than get some guys back on the roster. We'll have to see. But I don't see them having much of an impact in the Eastern Conference next year. Next up, the Chicago Bulls, B minus for them. I don't know. I think I'd say maybe more like a C for them because Andre Drummond isn't the same he used to be. The Zach LaVine extension was already good, and bringing in Andre Drummond to back up Vucevic is a bit of a good strategy, but I think they could have probably spent that money a little bit better somewhere else. Derrick Jones Jr. also came back, so that's why I think a B minus is good there. Cleveland, a C. They missed out on Usman Dang, but they did get Ochai Agbaji. I do like that. What else was it? They did. Colin Sexton's name barely appeared in the rumor mill, so maybe he's going to be back in Cleveland. They really don't know. They do bring back Ricky Rubio, and they signed Darius Garland to a massive extension, which, I mean, great job, Cleveland. You guys got a good point guard there, so I'm glad for y'all's sake y'all are able to lock him up for the next 5 years. I believe it was about 5 years, $191 million. Just a good idea to go ahead and lock him up. So yeah, C is where I would, no, I'd say maybe more like a B, just because they did lock up Darius Garland for the next few years, and they already have a great young core. And Ochai Agbaji is better than a lot of people think he's going to be. So I give them a B- to a B. Not much higher, but I think that's better than a C. Next up is the Pistons with a A. I mean, Jaden Ivey, that's a pretty good one. Jalen Duren was an even better trade in my opinion because they gave him or got him for basically nothing. The Jeremy Grant trade, you didn't really get back much in return, so I think they could have got a little bit more if they had been a little bit more patient, but at the end of the day, they pulled the trigger on that, and you know, they got a few veterans, Kemba Walker, Alec Burks, Nerlens Noel. Walker is likely going to be bought out and sent to another team. Marvin Bagley has another few years in Detroit. I do like that signing. I think he still has something left in him. I think he can be good. Kevin Knox is another guy they brought in. And, yeah, I would say maybe an A- to a B+. Nothing crazy. They're still going to be a pretty bad team. They're still going to be rebuilding. But at the end of the day, it was a good offseason if you're a Pistons fan. Even though you dropped in the draft, I still like it. And Indiana, Benedict Mathurin, they're going to give them a C. I would give them a C+ at least. Tyrese Halliburton is really going to be amazing in Indiana. I think he's going to be a superstar at some point in his career. Jalen Smith is another long-term sign. Buddy Hield and Miles Turner are also available is what they're saying in this. I do think they should trade Buddy Hield, but I think Miles Turner should be around to stay. They are going to be rebuilding this year, so I understand why they would want to trade them, but he's still relatively young. He's still got time in his career, so I would say C+ for the Pacers. Bucks, B. Trying not to be biased here, but I would definitely agree with at least a B, maybe even a B+, depending on how Joe Ingles ends up playing. But extending Bobby Portis was the most important part of this offseason, and we did just that. They did not play around in that asset or that part of the offseason. Joe Ingles, Javon Carter, and Wesley Matthews were other guys we brought back. Two of them brought in Joe Ingles, who you know, he's aging, he's coming off of an injury, but if he can get back to his level he was at before the injury, I'm more than happy to have him on the team. Serge Ibaka is back as well. I agree with the B. A- for the Hawks, A+ for the Hawks. DeJounte Murray in a trade where you don't give up John Collins or Clint Capella. I mean, that's an A+. The Hawks have one of the best off seasons so far. I'm not going to say anything else about that, but they had a great off season. Hornets are a C. Yeah, Miles Bridges is gone pretty much, so that's a little interesting. Mark Williams is possibly the answer they've been wanting for center. Gordon Hayward is supposed to be traded, but they never ended up doing it. Probably not much to, you know, too many teams that actually want to acquire Gordon Hayward. With that, we go to the Miami Heat. C- could obviously be an A+ if they end up trading for Kevin Durant, but as of right now, Victor Oladipo and Dwayne Dedmon are back on the team. They do lose PJ Tucker, and it looks like they're probably going to trade Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. So who knows what it's going to be like at the beginning of the season. We'll have to wait for them the most, in my opinion, in order to give them an actual grade. So C- I would say is fair, or maybe a question mark or non-applicable. Now we go to the Magic. Final two teams in the East. The Magic is a B- as they drafted Paolo Banchero first overall. Still a little iffy about that selection. I really like Jabari Smith Jr., and they did bring back Gary Harris and Mo Bamba. Two deals that were a little shocking, but I mean, I guess they're going to be bad next year. Franz Wagner will have more time to develop. Jalen Suggs has more time to develop. Cole Anthony, even Markelle Fultz, who I think they should trade to a contending team at some point, will have time to develop. So I think a B- is fair for them. And finally, for the Eastern Conference, the Washington Wizards have a D, and I don't know if I like that. I do think it was a bad offseason for them. C- is where I would go. honestly, because Bradley Beal should have been traded. You're not good. You're not going to be good unless you trade for Kevin Durant or another star. So bringing him back on a supermax is questionable considering you're going to be rebuilding no matter what. Now, Johnny Davis, I did like the selection there, but they bring in a bunch of guards and a bunch of veterans, Will Barton, DeLon Wright, Monte Morris, KCP. I mean, I just don't know if this team's going to have what it takes to make the play-in or the playoffs, or much less the play-in. So that's why I'm a little worried about this offseason, but we'll have to see how it pays off for them in the end, I guess, because it could be an okay signing if they get somebody else. If not, I think they definitely should have moved Bradley Beal. Now we're going to get into the Western Conference. I want to do this really quick. I don't want this video to be really long, so Nuggets B-. They did sign DeAndre Jordan, which was questionable. KCP and that trade. Ish Smith, a guard off the bench, and Bruce Brown was a nice trade or sign for them, just considering his defensive abilities, and they were losing Will Barton. So, I mean, OKC's offseason for them. I'd maybe go for a C+, maybe to a C. The Timberwolves a C-. No, I give them a D+. Unless they make the finals, there's nothing that's going to be payback or nothing good enough that's going to come out of that Rudy Gobert trade. Yeah, I give them a D-. I don't think this is a good offseason for them at all. Taurean Prince and Kyle Anderson are okay, but as soon as they traded for Rudy Gobert or how much they gave for him, I just can't respect that offseason. B+ for the Thunder. Chet Holmgren, Ousmane Dieng, Jalen Williams. Lou Dort got an extension. And, okay, I mean, yeah, Chet Holmgren looks really good through the first few games of Summer League. The other guys haven't really done too much, but it's just Summer League. You never know what's going to happen. B- or B. Just an average offseason for the Thunder. The Blazers, A-. They want to build a team around Anthony Simons and Damian Lillard. Okay, we agree about that. Gary Payton II. Yusuf Nurkic was re-signed. I do like Shaedon Sharpe as a selection and the Jeremy Grant trade. I would give them a B+. I don't think it's an A- just because they're not rebuilding, and I don't think they're quite good enough to make a finals run. So it's interesting to see what they do with the aging Damian Lillard next year. But at the end of the day, I could understand why you would put them in an A-. The Jazz, C+. No, I'm going to give the Jazz a B because that trade they got for Rudy Gobert sets them up so well for the future. They have enough assets now. If they want to go out there and trade for a star, they're going to. If not, they have their rebuild already set up for them. At least a B, maybe even higher for the Jazz. The Warriors, B-. They do lose Gary Payton II, but they brought a lot of people back as well. Dante DiVincenzo, the former Milwaukee Buck, is a good perimeter defender and a good, decent three-point shooter. He's a good energy guy for the Warriors. I think he's going to be a good role player for them. They are able to get Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins back, which was a big question coming to the offseason. But as this says, they've got to be confirmed, which I think they both will. And Patrick Baldwin Jr. is another solid late-round pick. So a B- is pretty good for them. The Clippers get Amir Coffey and Ivica Zubac on extensions. John Wall gets a buyout and finally comes to LA. It's been rumored for a while that he was going to be on the move, so he finally gets to a new team. Sure, B- or a B+ is anywhere in that range. The Clippers, all they need to do is get Kawhi back, and they're going to be right back in playoff contention. So that's really all they needed to do, was just get the team a little better and hope for the best. That's what they did. The Lakers get a C. It looks like they might end up trading for Kyrie Irving still. I mean, there's just a lot of talks. I'm sure the Nets are not in any type of rush, but I do really like the Lonnie Walker and Thomas Bryant trade or signings because both of those guys bring in some offense and some defense. Lonnie Walker obviously is a decent defender. Thomas Bryant not so much, but his offense greatly outweighs his defense, so that's a good offseason for them. I give them a C+ at least. Don't think it's going to make them a finals team, but you've got LeBron, you've got AD, and I think Darvin Ham can help that team turn it around, so maybe they are in the finals next year. Finally, the Suns are right up next. A C, maybe even a little lower. They are in the trade talks for Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Ayton is likely the piece that's going to be going, so I guess if they make that trade, it's going to be a little higher of an offseason, but at the end of the day, a C is where they'll sit for now because they haven't really made many moves. Cam Johnson hasn't been re-signed. Jake Crowder hasn't been traded. I mean, really nothing has happened for the Suns. The Kings get a B+ for drafting Keegan Murray. Harrison Barnes was not traded. Malik Monk is brought in as well. And sure, it's an alright offseason. Kevin Huerter is an interesting idea for the Kings, but I don't know if it's going to work out at least the way they want it to. So the Mavericks are an E. I'm assuming that means lower than an F, but they do lose Jalen Brunson. They gave up a big contract to JaVale McGee, and they did make the trade for Christian Wood. I will say that's a bad offseason. I don't think it's that low. I think it's maybe a D+, maybe a D. You know, they bring in Christian Wood. I like that trade a lot at the time, but the JaVale McGee signing doesn't really make sense considering you still have good centers there as well, and Dwight Powell. I'll give them a D+ in my opinion. They're not that low, but I think it's a pretty bad offseason. The Rockets get a B+. Jabari Smith Jr. is, in my opinion, the best player in this draft, so third overall pick for him is good. Ty Washington and Tari Eason. They bought out John Wall, finally get some space for their other players, and Jalen Green has another year to develop. B+ for them, that's fair. B for the Grizzlies. Tyus Jones is re-signed. They lose D'Anthony Melton and Kyle Anderson, and I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s injury, in my opinion, has to push this down to a C. I would say a C+. They're not going to have a good beginning of the season. They're going to make the playoffs, in my opinion, but that loss really hurts them. So I give this offseason a C. And down to the final two teams, we go to the Pelicans, who got in Dyson Daniels, who could, in my opinion, be a sleeper for Rookie of the Year. Zion Williamson is really what it all matters, and sure, C, they haven't done much outside of that. And yeah, the Spurs, finally, the last team, a D. Give them an F. That DeJounte Murray trade was an insane trade. I mean, should not even be going through the minds if you're the front office of trading DeJounte Murray, at least for what they got in return. Maybe Jeremy Sokin can be a good rookie, but at the end of the day, the trade is terrible. Looks like they're going to be tanking for Victor Wembanyama next year, which, I mean, I guess is a good idea. He looks like a stud, and yeah, just not a good offseason for them. How do you guys feel about these grades? How do you feel about my grades? I'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you guys for watching this video. I'll talk to you again in another video if you enjoyed. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.